I swear I stopped breathing when I saw them. My husband. And another man. In our bed. That image burned into me like fire through glass. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there at the window, watching the life I built crumble in one impossible heartbeat. But if you want to understand how I got there, you need to know what came before. Because that night didn't begin with betrayal. It began with small things. Little cracks in the quiet life I thought was perfect. It was 1978. I was 32, married for almost 10 years to Roberto, tall, handsome, with those impossible green eyes that made me blush even after 2 children. We lived in a modest house in Buenos Aires. I sewed dresses from home. He worked at a textile factory. We had Marcelo 8 and Sofia 5. Sundays were for church, the park, and made in the backyard while the kids ran circles around us. That was happiness, or what I thought happiness looked like. Then one morning he changed. At first it was nothing, or maybe I told myself it was nothing. He started showering more, buying new shirts, leaving earlier for work. Sometimes he'd come home late, smelling faintly of something sharp and foreign, like a stranger's cologne. He said he was doing extra hours. I wanted to believe him. Wives like me, we didn't ask questions. We just prayed harder. But nights became heavier. He'd lie next to me, close enough to feel the warmth of his body, yet far enough that I could sense the distance between us. A distance I couldn't cross no matter how I tried. His touch changed. His voice softer, distracted. It felt like sleeping beside a ghost. Weeks turned into months, and the laughter in the house grew thin. He didn't play with the kids anymore. He ate in silence. When I asked if everything was okay, he snapped, "Nalba, please. Not everything revolves around you." It wasn't the words that hurt most. It was the tone. Cold. Unfamiliar. I had never heard my husband speak to me that way. That night I stared at the ceiling until dawn. I prayed for answers. Instead I found suspicion. A woman knows. Even when she doesn't want to. I started checking his shirts for perfume, his pockets for clues. I didn't find lipstick or notes. Only strange things that didn't fit. A napkin from a bar I'd never heard of. A movie ticket from a theater we'd never been to. A piece of paper with a phone number written in an elegant hand that wasn't his. Then one afternoon while dusting his desk, I found it. A folded note with an address in San Telmo. I didn't recognize the handwriting. My heart thudded so loud it drowned out everything else. Why would he have an address across town in a neighborhood he never mentioned? That evening when he came home I couldn't hold it in. I waited until dinner was over, until the kids were asleep. Then I asked, "Roberto, do you know anyone in San Telmo?" He froze, fork halfway to his mouth. Then he forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Why are you asking me that, Nalba?" I said. "I just found an address, that's all." He stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "Don't start imagining things," he said. "It's a client. From work." But I knew him too well. The tremor in his voice, the way he rubbed the back of his neck, that was his tell. He was lying. From that night on I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I'd wake up in the dark and listen to him breathe beside me, wondering who he was when I wasn't looking. So one afternoon I did what I never thought I'd do. I followed him. I left the kids with my neighbor Dona Carmen, took the bus to his factory, and waited across the street in a small cafe. At 6 I saw him leave with a group of coworkers laughing. My heart twisted with relief. Maybe I was wrong. But then they all split up, and Roberto headed not toward home, but the opposite way. Toward San Telmo. I followed him onto the bus, sitting a few rows behind, praying he wouldn't turn around. He stared out the window, lost in thought. The city slid by in streaks of gray and gold until we reached the old quarter. He got off. So did I. He walked for several blocks before stopping at a 2-story house with a green door. He rang the bell. Someone opened. He went inside. I waited on the corner for what felt like an eternity. 2 hours. My body numb, my heart a wild drum in my chest. When the door finally opened again, he wasn't alone. A tall blonde man stepped out beside him, well-dressed, elegant. They spoke quietly, smiling. Then Roberto reached for him, an embrace. Not a friendly one. Not the kind men give each other in greeting. It was tender. Intimate. The kind of embrace he hadn't given me in months. My vision blurred. My knees went weak. I had to hold onto a wall to stay standing. In that instant I knew. It wasn't another woman. It was something I had no words for. Not in 1978. Not in my world. I don't remember how I got home. Just the taxi driver's voice asking if I was all right. And me nodding through tears I didn't even feel. When I walked into the house, Donna Carmen said I looked pale. I told her I was fine. Just tired. But inside everything had cracked open. That night, I pretended to sleep as Roberto slipped into bed beside me. He turned, restless, sighing into the dark. He knew. He knew I'd seen. And lying there with the man I thought I knew breathing quietly beside me, I realized I didn't even know who I was anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes I saw them, Roberto and that man. Their hands, their closeness, the kind of tenderness I thought belonged only to me. By sunrise my pillow was damp with tears, and I still hadn't moved. I stared at the wall as the first light spilled into our bedroom, hitting the framed photo of our wedding. My veil, his smile, the priest's blessing. Till death do us part. What a cruel joke that sounded now. I went downstairs when I heard the sound of plates. Roberto was already in the kitchen, making breakfast like any other Sunday. When he turned and saw me, his eyes flickered. Fear, guilt, something deep and silent. "Morning," he said softly, as if saying it too loud would break the air between us. The smell of toasted bread filled the room, but I couldn't eat. Marcelo was talking about his school projects, Sofia about her doll. Roberto smiled at them, but his hands trembled when he poured the milk. I watched him. The man I'd shared a bed, a life, children with, and now I didn't recognize him. After breakfast he asked, "Can we talk?" I nodded. My voice wouldn't come out even if I tried. We went out to the patio, the same one where we used to drink mate together in the afternoons. The morning sun was cold. I could hear the faint hum of traffic in the distance. He stood there, his hands in his pockets, staring at the ground. "I know you saw me," he said quietly. "Last night." My throat closed. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand why, but the words died inside me. All I could whisper was, "How long?" He looked up, and for the first time since I'd known him, his eyes were full of tears. "A long time, Nalba. Before I met you." The world tilted. Before me? Before our marriage? Before our children? "So everything," I said slowly, the words tasting like ash. "Everything we've had was a lie?" He shook his head quickly. No. I thought I could change. I thought if I married you, if we built a family, I could fix myself." He said it like it was something broken inside him, something shameful, something to be hidden away. I sat down because I couldn't stand anymore. 10 years of marriage, 2 children, and all this time he'd been living behind a mask. "Who is he?" I asked. He hesitated. "Carlos. Your friend." He swallowed. "My partner." The word hit me like a slap. Partner. That simple, that devastating. I had followed him thinking I'd find another woman. I could have handled that. I would have screamed, cursed, thrown him out. But this? This was something I couldn't even define. In 1978, there wasn't a word for what I saw that didn't come laced with shame. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said. "I love you, Nalba. I love our children. But I can't keep lying. Not to you, not to myself." I couldn't look at him. I stared at the cracked tiles beneath my feet, at the place where a little green weed had pushed through the cement. Life always finds a way, even where it doesn't belong. He sat across from me, his hands trembling. "I tried," he said, almost whispering. "I really tried. You've been so good to me, so patient, so kind. I thought maybe love like yours could make me different." That broke me, because I realized in his own way, he had loved me, but never as a woman should be loved. I asked him quietly, "Do you love him?" He hesitated for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Yes." I closed my eyes. The words sliced through me clean and deep. The sound of laughter drifted from inside. Marcelo chasing Sofia down the hallway. Our children. Our perfect little world. What are we supposed to tell them? I asked. He rubbed his face. "I don't know." His voice cracked. "God, Nalba, I don't know anything anymore." He started to cry, really cry. The kind of crying that comes from a place beyond words. I wanted to hate him, but all I felt was hollow. Like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left only the shell. "You built a family," I said quietly. You made me build it with you. And all this time you knew. He stood, pacing, his hands on his head. I thought it would go away. I thought if I just kept going, if I did everything right, it would disappear. He looked at me then, eyes red, desperate. I swear I never wanted to live a lie. I just didn't know how to live the truth. The silence after that was heavier than any argument. I could feel the wind pick up, carrying the faint smell of rain. Finally I said, "So what happens now?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the sky as if it might tell him what to do. The kids came outside, asking if we were going to church. Roberto wiped his face quickly and said, "Yes, of course." I stood beside him in that small chapel, the same one where we'd promised to be together forever. He prayed with his head bowed low, and I wondered what he was asking for, forgiveness or courage. I held Sophia's little hand in mine and tried not to break, because sitting there in front of God, surrounded by silence and candles, I realized that the man beside me, my husband, was already gone. That afternoon when he said he needed to talk to Carlos, I just nodded. What was there left to say? He left and I stayed behind with the kids, pretending life was normal. But nothing was normal anymore. The walls of the house felt too small, the air too thick. After putting Marcelo and Sophia to bed, I sat alone in the dark, my hands shaking. And that's when it hit me, the anger. It came slowly, rising through my chest until it filled every breath. I had spent 10 years being a good wife, a faithful woman, a mother who gave everything. And now I was the ghost in a story that was never mine. I pressed my hands to my face and whispered to the empty room. Why wasn't I enough? There was no answer. Only the echo of my own voice breaking. Outside I heard the faint sound of a car door closing. Roberto was home. And I knew. The next words we spoke would change everything forever. He came home past midnight. I heard the key turn, slow and hesitant, like he was afraid of the sound it would make. I didn't move. I sat on the couch in the dark, hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, waiting for him to walk through that door. When he saw me, he froze. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the old clock ticking on the wall, steady, merciless. Did you talk to him? I finally asked. My voice came out lower than I expected, tired, stripped of everything but truth. He nodded. Yes. And he took a deep breath, ran his fingers through his hair. He wants me to move in with him. I laughed. It wasn't real laughter. It came out sharp, bitter, too loud for the silence. Oh, how nice, I said. At least someone knows what they want. Nalba, please. No, I cut him off. Don't please me. Not tonight. You lied to me for 10 years, Roberto. 10 years. I gave you everything. My body, my time, my life. And you were pretending. You were pretending every single day. He flinched like I'd slapped him, but I didn't care. The anger I'd been holding for months was spilling out now, wild and unstoppable. You think I didn't notice? I said. The late nights, the excuses, the distance? I thought it was another woman. I prayed it wasn't. I prayed until my knees hurt, and the whole time you were. My voice cracked. You were with him. Roberto didn't interrupt. He just stood there, silent, his face pale, his eyes shining with something I couldn't name. When I finally stopped talking, he whispered, I'm sorry. Those 2 words were like ashes in my mouth. You're sorry, I repeated. That's all you have to say? He nodded, helpless. I never meant for this to happen. I didn't plan it. I laughed again, softer this time. You didn't plan it? You planned a life, Roberto. You planned a family. You planned me. He came closer, but I stepped back. Don't, I said. Just don't. He looked around the house at the photos on the walls, the toys scattered on the floor, the dinner dishes still sitting in the sink. Everything we'd built together. Everything that suddenly felt like a museum exhibit from a life that wasn't real. I'm leaving, he said finally, his voice trembling. Not tonight. But soon. I need to figure out how to tell the kids. Tell them what? I snapped. That their father doesn't love their mother? That everything they know about family is a lie? He looked like he might collapse under the weight of it. But I couldn't stop. The pain inside me had turned to fire. You've ruined everything, I said. And for what? For him? For your truth? He stared at me then, eyes red. For myself, Nalba. Because I can't breathe anymore. Because living this lie is killing me. And if I keep pretending, I'll die before my time. I don't want that for you or for them. The words hung between us like smoke. For the first time, I saw him not as my husband but as a man drowning in something he'd never been allowed to say. And against my will, a tear slipped down my cheek. You should have told me, I said quietly. You should have trusted me. I was afraid, he said. Afraid you'd hate me. I don't hate you, I whispered. I wish I did. It would be easier. He reached for my hand and for a moment I let him. The warmth of his skin was familiar, comforting, and cruel all at once. Then I pulled away. You can stay in the guest room tonight, I said, standing. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. He nodded, broken, and walked away down the hall. When I heard the door close, I sank back into the chair and let the sobs come. They came in waves: grief, rage, disbelief. 10 years of pretending that my life was solid when it had always been balancing on a lie. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I made coffee and watched the sun rise over the quiet street. The world looked the same, but I wasn't the same woman anymore. When the kids woke up, I put on a smile. Marcelo ran to hug me. Sophia climbed into my lap. Their warmth almost broke me again. I wondered what they'd think of me when they grew up. If they'd see me as the fool who didn't know, or the woman who stayed too long in silence. Roberto came into the kitchen, wearing the same shirt from the night before. He looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in a single night. We didn't speak. We just exchanged a glance, one of those looks that say we're done but we still have to keep living. After breakfast, he left for work without a word. I watched him walk down the street until he disappeared around the corner. The silence that followed was suffocating. That evening, Dona Carmen stopped by to borrow sugar. She took one look at me and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I smiled weakly. Maybe I have. She didn't ask questions. Maybe she already knew. People always know when something breaks inside a home. When Roberto came back that night, the air between us was thick and cold. We ate in silence, both pretending the children couldn't feel the storm building over their heads. After dinner, he sat at the table, staring at his hands. "We can't keep doing this," he said finally. "I know." He looked up, his eyes wet again. "I'll leave after the weekend. I'll find a place." I nodded, numb. That night, I lay in bed alone for the first time in 10 years. And even though the house was quiet, I could still hear his voice echoing through the walls. I thought I could change. I thought love could fix me. It was then that I realized something terrifying. I didn't just lose a husband. I lost the version of myself who believed love was enough to save anyone. The next morning, I packed his things in silence: shirts, books, photographs. Each item felt like another goodbye I didn't agree to. When he came home from work, he didn't argue. He just looked at the suitcase and nodded. "Thank you," he said softly. "Don't thank me," I replied. "Just go live honestly. That's all I ever wanted." He paused by the door. "I'll come by for the kids on Sunday," he said. And then he left. When the door closed, the quiet was absolute. I thought I'd feel relief, but instead I felt hollow, like a house after a fire, still standing but full of ash. I sat down at the table, staring at the empty chair across from me. And I realized, for the first time in my life, I didn't know who I was without him. Then came the sound. A knock at the door. Soft. Hesitant. For a moment I thought it was him again. But when I opened it, it wasn't Roberto. It was Carlos. When I opened the door and saw him standing there, I forgot how to breathe. Carlos. The man I had seen through that half-open window. The ghost who haunted my nights since that awful evening in San Telmo. Now he was on my porch, holding his hat in both hands, eyes full of shame. "Señora Nalba," he said softly, voice trembling. "Please, may I speak with you?" For a long second I just stared at him. The world felt silent. Even the cicadas outside seemed to stop. I wanted to slam the door, to scream, to make him vanish. But something in his face, not arrogance, not pity but pain, stopped me. I stepped aside. "5 minutes," I said. He nodded, walked in quietly, like a man entering a church he didn't deserve to be in. He looked around, the family photos on the wall, the little shoes by the door, the toys half hidden under the couch. He was seeing the life he had broken. "Would you like tea?" I asked out of habit, my voice detached, mechanical. He shook his head. No, thank you. We stood there in silence for a while. Then he said, Roberto told me everything. About your talk. About the children. I crossed my arms. Did he tell you he ruined 10 years of my life? Carlos flinched. I didn't come to defend him, he said. Or myself. I came because I needed to tell you something from one human being to another. I didn't answer. I just waited, my jaw tight. He took a deep breath. He loves you. Maybe not the way you wanted or deserved, but he does. He told me that you are the reason he survived so long, pretending that you were the only light he ever had. I laughed, a hard, bitter sound. And that makes it better? No, he said quickly. It makes it sadder. His voice broke a little. I never wanted this to happen like this. I begged him to tell you the truth. But he was terrified of losing everything. His children, his home, his dignity. Then he should have thought of that before lying to me. Carlos nodded. You're right. He looked at me, then really looked, not like a rival, not like a lover of my husband, but like a man who understood pain. I didn't come to ask for forgiveness, he said. I know I don't deserve it. But please don't let hate destroy you. Roberto's truth is not your shame. Those words hit something inside me. Something raw and burning. Because hate was exactly what had been keeping me standing. Without it, I was just empty. I turned away from him, staring at the photograph of our wedding on the wall. I don't even know what to feel anymore, I said quietly. I've been angry, humiliated, confused. But mostly I feel stupid. For not seeing it. For building my life on something that was never real. He stepped closer, his voice soft. It was real, Señora. The love might have been different, but the care, the family you built together, that was real. I've seen the way he talks about you. The way he talks about your children. You gave him peace when he didn't know what peace was. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Peace, I whispered. And now he's found his own while mine's gone. Carlos lowered his head. He hasn't found peace yet. He's scared. He doesn't know how to live in the open. He just knows he can't keep hiding. I wanted to say I didn't care. I wanted to tell him to leave and never come back. But when I opened my mouth, the words came out different. Does he love you? I asked. Carlos hesitated. Then he nodded. Yes. But love built on fear isn't love yet. It's still hiding. There was no anger in his answer, only sorrow. He looked older than I remembered. We were all aging overnight. After a moment I said, You should go. He nodded, turned toward the door. But before leaving, he stopped and said softly, He'll never stop being the father of your children. And I know he'll never stop being grateful for you. Whatever happens, please remember that. When he closed the door behind him, the silence returned, heavier than before. I stood there for a long time, staring at the wood grain of that door, until I finally let the tears fall. I didn't cry for Roberto this time. I cried for the woman I used to be, the one who believed she was safe. The next few days passed in fragments. I moved through the house like a ghost. I cooked, cleaned, folded clothes, smiled for the kids, all by instinct. But inside I was hollow. Roberto came by to see the children every other day. He brought gifts, chocolates, promises of next weekend. We spoke little. Our words were careful, polite, like strangers forced to share the same space. But one afternoon as he was leaving, he paused at the door. Did Carlos come here? He asked. I froze. Yes, I said. He did. He nodded, eyes unreadable. What did he say? That you love me, I said flatly, and that I shouldn't let hate destroy me. Roberto exhaled, almost smiling, but it wasn't a happy smile. He's a good man, he said quietly. I felt a flash of fury. He's the man who helped you destroy our family. I know, he said looking down. And he hates himself for it. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He reached for my hand, hesitated, then let it fall. I'll never forgive myself for the pain I caused you, he said. Then don't ask me to, I replied. Just be a good father. That's all I want now. He nodded and left. I watched from the window as he walked away. Slower this time, smaller somehow. And I wondered if grief looks the same on everyone, no matter who they've hurt. That night, after putting the children to bed, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table with an old notebook, the one where I used to write sewing orders. On the first clean page I wrote, "Who am I now?" And below it, I began to list the things I'd forgotten I could be. Not a wife, not a victim, not someone's shadow. A mother. A woman. A survivor. The more I wrote, the lighter I felt. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was a beginning. The next morning, I went to the small church alone. Father Luis greeted me with his usual gentle smile. "You haven't come by in a while, Hija," he said. I didn't know what to say to God, I admitted. He nodded slowly. Sometimes silence is prayer too. I knelt, closed my eyes, and whispered to the empty air, "Please, help me understand how to forgive without forgetting." When I walked out, the sky was gray but clearing. The kind of sky that promises rain before sun. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But that evening, as I tucked Sophia into bed, she looked up at me with those big eyes and asked, "Mama, why doesn't Papa live here anymore?" The question hit harder than any confession. I opened my mouth and realized I had no answer that wouldn't break her heart. For weeks after Sophia's question, I lived in silence. Every word I didn't say to my daughter hung in the air like a ghost, following me from room to room. I told her what mothers tell when they have no better truth. "Papa had to go work somewhere else, mi amor. But he loves you very much." She nodded, believing me, the way children believe everything their mothers say. But I could see the confusion in her eyes. The same confusion I carried in my chest every morning when I woke up alone. Life moved on, or at least pretended to. Roberto visited on weekends. He took the children to the park, bought them candy, brought me flowers I didn't want. He was trying, but every time he stood on that porch, I felt like my house was shrinking around him, pushing him back out. And then one Friday afternoon, while I was sewing a dress for a neighbor, I heard the postman call my name. He handed me a small envelope, my name written in Roberto's handwriting. For a moment I thought it was about the children, maybe money for school or a schedule change. But when I opened it, my heart clenched. It wasn't about logistics. It was a confession. "Nalba, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to understand. I have left the factory. I'm moving to Rosario with Carlos. I've been offered a job there. I want to start a new life. An honest one. Please know that I will always be here for the children. Always. They are the best of both of us. And you are stronger than anyone I've ever known. I'll never forget that you saved me once, even if I didn't realize it then. Roberto." I read the letter 3 times, each word cutting deeper. He was leaving the city, leaving the life we built, leaving me with 2 children and a pile of memories that no longer belonged anywhere. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer with the sewing needles. Sharp things belong together. That night, after putting Marcelo and Sophia to bed, I poured myself a cup of mate and sat by the window. Outside, the streetlights flickered, and I thought of the nights Roberto used to come home late, of the lies he told, of the man he tried to be. Now he was gone for good. I wanted to hate him. God knows I tried. But hate doesn't last forever. Not when you've shared a life, a bed, 2 children, and 1,000 small mornings together. What stays is the ache. That quiet, steady ache of missing something you know wasn't ever truly yours. Days blurred into months. I went back to work full-time, taking in more sewing to pay for the bills. Donna Carmen helped with the kids. Sundays became quieter. No more church as a family, no more walks in the park. Just me and the children and the sound of a new kind of silence. Sometimes at night, I'd hear Marcelo whisper in his bed, asking God to bring his father home. I'd sit by his side, stroke his hair and tell him, "God listens, Missy." Sometimes he just answers in ways we don't expect. And I'd wonder if God was listening to me too. One evening months later, I was folding clothes when I heard a knock on the door. For a moment my heart jumped. I thought it was Roberto. But when I opened it, there was no one there. Just a small package left on the step, wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a little box, and in it a photograph, our family at the park taken years ago. Me, Roberto, the children. Behind the photo, a note written in the same handwriting as the letter. For when they ask who we were, please tell them the truth, that I loved you even if I didn't know how. I pressed the photo to my chest, tears spilling down my face before I could stop them. I didn't want his love anymore. But I wanted to believe it had been real in some way, even if it was broken. That night, after putting the photo in a drawer, I took out my notebook again. I turned to the page where I'd written, "Who am I now?" And below it I added, "I am the woman who survived the truth." The next morning, Sophia asked if we could visit the park, the same one where that photo had been taken. I hesitated but then nodded. It was time. The park was just as I remembered, children playing, dogs barking, the smell of grass and roasted peanuts in the air. I sat on the same bench where Roberto and I used to drink mate, watching my children chase each other through the sunlight. They looked happy, genuinely happy, and for the first time in a long while I realized that maybe we'd be okay. A gentle breeze brushed my face and I thought of Roberto, of the boy who fell in love with me, of the man who tried to be someone else, and of the truth he finally set free. Maybe love doesn't die. Maybe it just changes shape, from passion to memory, from memory to peace. I didn't forgive him yet. Not fully. But as I watched Marcelo push Sophia on the swing, laughing, something inside me softened. Maybe forgiveness wasn't something you gave. Maybe it was something that grew quietly, like sunlight through broken glass. That night, after the kids fell asleep, I sat at the table with the photo again. The edges were worn now, the ink fading. I traced my finger along Roberto's face and whispered, "Be free wherever you are." The house was still, the moonlight spilling through the curtains. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel betrayed. I just felt human. I closed the drawer, turned off the light, and went to bed, alone but at peace. Or at least close to it. But before sleep found me, a thought crept into my mind. One question I hadn't dared to ask yet. What if Roberto wasn't the only one who needed to start over? It's been 22 years since that night in San Telmo. Sometimes it feels like a dream I had a lifetime ago. Blurred, strange, too heavy to be real. And yet, every now and then I still wake up at dawn, expecting to hear Roberto's footsteps in the hallway. But the house is quiet now. The children are grown. Marcelo has 2 daughters of his own, and Sophia just moved to Cordoba for work. And me? I live alone in the same little house that once felt like it might collapse from sorrow. Only now it feels like mine again. I have silver hair, wrinkles that tell their own stories, and a peace I never thought I'd earn. And sometimes on quiet mornings, I sit in the garden with my mate and talk to the wind, pretending it can carry my words to whoever still remembers. Took me years to forgive Roberto. Not all at once, forgiveness never happens in a clean line. It's like learning to walk again after you've fallen too hard. You limp for a while, you stumble, and then one day you realize the pain doesn't control you anymore. The kids grew up knowing more than I ever said out loud. I never told them every detail. Some truths belonged to the adults who lived them. But I did tell them their father loved them. And that was enough. When Marcelo turned 18, he asked me, "Mama, why did you stay so long? Why didn't you leave when you found out?" I told him the truth. Because love doesn't disappear in one night, hijo. Sometimes it fades slowly, like the color of an old photograph. You don't notice it's gone until the paper's white again. He didn't answer, he just hugged me. And in that moment I knew he understood more than he could say. Years passed and life became gentle again. I found joy in small things, the hum of my sewing machine, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery, the laughter of my grandchildren. I learned that healing isn't about forgetting the people who hurt you. It's about remembering yourself without them. And then one afternoon out of nowhere I received a call. A quiet, hesitant voice on the other end. "Señora Nalba? This is Carlos." I hadn't heard his name in years. For a moment the air left my lungs. He went on, "Roberto, he's sick. Very sick. He asked for you." My hands began to tremble. "Where is he?" I whispered. "Rosario," he said. "At the hospital. He doesn't have much time." 2 days later I was there. The city smelled of rain and oranges. I hadn't been back in decades. When I entered the hospital room, I almost didn't recognize him. Roberto was thin, frail, his once dark hair now white as salt. But his eyes, those same green eyes, still had the gentleness I'd fallen in love with. He smiled faintly when he saw me. "You came." "I did," I said softly. "You asked for me." Carlos was sitting in the corner, quiet, giving us space. I looked at him, older, softer, and nodded in silent understanding. Life had changed him too. Roberto reached for my hand. His skin was cool, trembling. I wanted to tell you. I never stopped thinking about you. Or the kids. Or what I did. You don't have to, I said. It's all right. No, he whispered. It's not. But I needed you to know I found peace. Real peace. Carlos took care of me. He gave me something I've been searching for my whole life, the courage to be myself. A tear rolled down his cheek, and I caught it with my thumb, the same way I used to when he came home tired from work. Old habits never die, even after decades of distance. He smiled weakly. You were my home once, Nalba. And you were my storm, I said, half smiling through tears. But storms end too. He laughed, a faint broken laugh that filled the room with something almost beautiful. I'm glad you came, he whispered again. Tell our children I love them. I will, I said. They know. He closed his eyes, still holding my hand, and just like that he was gone. The funeral was small, just family and a few old friends from Buenos Aires. Carlos stood beside me, silent. When the service ended, he turned to me and said, Thank you for coming, for giving him peace. I nodded. He gave me peace too in the end. Maybe not the one I expected, but the one I needed. Before leaving, I placed the old photograph, the one he had sent me years ago, on his coffin. For when they ask who we were, I whispered. I returned home to Buenos Aires the next day. When I entered the house, the late afternoon light filled every corner. It felt warm, alive. I sat down at the table, opened my notebook one last time and wrote, Forgiveness isn't forgetting what happened. It's remembering without pain. I looked around, at the walls that had heard every fight, every prayer, every silence. And I realized something simple but powerful. I wasn't broken anymore. Now, when Sophia visits with her little girl, she sometimes asks me to tell stories from when I was young. She always wants to hear about Grandpa Roberto. I tell her about the man who built us a swing in the backyard, who made the best empanadas on Sundays, who used to sing off-key while shaving. I don't tell her about the nights I cried. That part is mine. But when she asks, Did you love him, Abuela? I smile and say, Yes, mi vida. I loved him enough to let him go. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind rustles through the trees, I imagine Roberto's voice whispering, Thank you. I whisper back, Go in peace. Because love, even the kind that ends, never really disappears. It just changes shape, waits quietly, and teaches us how to start again.